Hey, this is Warren Redlick, another FUD piece to tell you about. This is from the Heritage Foundation, which is a noted conservative, neocon, pro-oil, anti-EV, anti-environment interest group, whatever. And they're attacking electric vehicles in this FUD piece. So let's take it apart. California's battery-powered EVs could increase emissions. Could? Well, I guess you guys feel strongly about that. The article is written by Diana Furchtgott-Roth, director of the Center for Energy, Climate, Environment. I'm sure this is a group that genuinely cares about energy, climate, and the environment. And if you look her up, she is this director, blah, 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 an Oxford-educated economist, a frequent guest on TV and radio shows, and a columnist for Forbes. So, and then she worked in senior roles under Presidents Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush. So she's very clearly supported by Republicans and conservatives, and the Bush family in particular is very, very much pro-oil, pro-fossil fuel, and not particularly fond of electric vehicles. But why would an economist, an Oxford-educated economist, this is an article that she's going to dive into the efficiency of electric vehicles as compared to gasoline vehicles, and she's way out of her league in this topic. But just looking at this, you know, she's got a bunch of mucky-muck positions, author and co-author of 6 books and hundreds of articles, most recently, U.S. Income, Wealth, Consumption, and Inequality. Well, obviously, she's an expert in electric vehicle efficiency and gasoline vehicle efficiency. This isn't her bag. Why is she writing this? She's writing this because she's paid to write it. So let's learn more about Diane's view. Key takeaways. Although Teslas and Ford F-150 Lightning pickup trucks might be fun to drive, are F-150 Lightning pickup trucks fun to drive? The Mustang Mach-E might be fun to drive. These new purchases might not be reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Again, that courageous, bold statement, they might not be reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah, they are. They are. Well, at least the Teslas are. I can't speak to the F-150, but the Teslas are. Those concerned about greenhouse gas emissions may also be worried about the negative effects on the environment of mining for battery components. Those concerned about might be concerned about the negative effects of oil drilling, of oil wars. The Bushes and Reagans love to spend lots of money and emit lots of CO2 fighting oil wars, sending military all over the world, challenging to make sure we have a flow of oil. I'm concerned about that. Apparently, the Heritage Foundation doesn't care about that. Until electricity can be generated by emissions-free power, battery-powered vehicles will generally increase rather than reduce emissions. This is a lie. This is a lie. Tesla's addressed this in their impact report. Generally increase? What does that mean? This is nonsense. Emissions-free power? What does that mean? This is just total nonsense. A Tesla running on the typical mix of electricity generated in the United States or Europe or pretty much any other country. We just saw this with Sorella Mori. This is funny that I've got this piece on electric vehicles and FUD, and I just did a video, Sorella Mori, you can check the video here. I ripped apart her. Same type of thing. You know, choose your facts carelessly, pick random thoughts, and then come up with this nonsense. Come 2035, California residents will have to shop elsewhere for new gasoline-powered vehicles. Yes, so California, the California Air Resources Board created this rule that from 2035 on, all new cars have to be EVs, including plug-in hybrids or hydrogen fuel cell, and 70% of cars sold from 2030. This is now I'll just say this. I think California's decision is nonsense. By 2030, no one's going to be selling gasoline cars except for rare exceptions. Electric vehicles are going to be produced in such volumes, demand is going to be so high, and the current gasoline vehicle companies are going to be bankrupt. They're going to be bankrupt. They're done. They're done. No one's going to want these crappy gasoline cars. They're done. Now, maybe you can't scale up EVs fast enough, and there will still be gasoline vehicles produced because you need vehicles and there aren't enough electric vehicles to satisfy demand. Well, then making a law saying you can't buy them doesn't solve any problems. If you need the vehicles, you need the vehicles. I think by 2035, there's no question that there will be sufficient electric vehicles to solve this problem. And if not, so California is stupid for passing this rule, but the reason they're stupid for passing the rule is if EVs are better than gas cars, then you don't need the rule. And if there aren't enough EVs to solve the problem, then you're just creating a major problem for society and for the economy if there aren't enough vehicles to satisfy what people need. Everyone loves battery-powered electric vehicles, especially when gasoline's over $3 or $4 a gallon. No, you don't love electric vehicles. You don't love battery-powered electric vehicles. Points to a senator tweeting that everyone should get an electric car. Everyone can't get an electric car. There aren't enough electric cars. They might not reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Batteries use fossil fuels for charging. No crap. The latest research shows that electricity for battery-powered vehicles is coming from coal and natural gas rather than renewables. The latest research? You needed research for that? The vast majority of electricity produced in the United States and Europe is coming from natural gas and coal. I mean, I guess Europe's going to have a problem because Russia's cutting off the gas, but we all knew that. We didn't need research for this. This is the same thing we saw in previous FUD pieces. Is you'll go to some authority, the latest research, as if we needed research for this. We know this. We know that we're still shifting the mix to solar and wind and battery storage for backup. We know we're a long way from getting there. We're not going to be there till 2030, maybe. It's a long time. So yes, of course, a lot of the electricity is coming from fossil fuels. If battery-powered vehicles were to be charged with emissions-free energy, then emissions from transportation could perhaps be reduced. No, emissions from transportation are reduced even with fossil fuels powering Teslas. Even with fossil fuels generating the electricity that power Teslas, emit less CO2. They are more efficient than gasoline cars, than comparable gasoline cars. No, I suppose my Model X Plaid might not be more efficient than a Toyota Prius, right? I suppose that's possible, but or you know some hyper-efficient Honda Civic or something like that. I suppose that's true because I got a 5,300-pound vehicle, and if it's running on coal-generated electricity, but if you compare vehicle to vehicle, Tesla Model 3 to Toyota Camry, it's a clear winner. Then she says, but solar, wind, and nuclear are generally used for other purposes, and additional sources of electricity to meet electricity demand come from fossil fuels and hydropower. Well, there's nothing wrong with hydropower. Hydropower is CO2, doesn't emit CO2, but you know the electricity market is fluid. Electricity goes here, there, and everywhere. It's not like my plug is coming from coal and your plug is coming from solar. It's all in a big mix in the grid. As I've written elsewhere, the mix of fuels turned on and off to meet additional demand is not the same as the mix used for total electricity production. Until emission-free vehicles are common enough to have a net environmental benefit, battery-powered vehicles will not reduce emissions. This is just a big fat lie. This is an interest group that is probably funded by big oil, telling big fat lies. Maybe they're funded by big auto, maybe they're funded by big oil. They're very clearly, this author is very clearly aligned with the Bush family, the Reagans, the conservative establishment, big fossil fuel, big oil. This is a lie. It's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie. Producing batteries results in emissions. No crap, really? Duh. Producing cars results in emissions. You know what really results in emissions? Producing oil, producing gasoline. And 83% of China's energy comes from fossil fuels. Okay, whatever, and the batteries are coming from China. You know what? The oil's coming from Saudi Arabia. The oil's coming from the Middle East. I mean, some of the oil comes from the US, that's true, but you know, when you produce oil, you've got to find the oil. There's a process of finding the oil reserves first. Then you got to drill for the oil. Then you got to bring the oil up. Then you got to transport the oil to a refinery. All of this results in emissions. Then you got to refine it. There's a lot of emissions in the refining. Then you got to transport the gasoline and other products to their destinations, like to gas stations. There's emissions in that. Then I've got to drive my car to the gas station, fill the tank, and drive home. There's more emissions there. You can charge your Tesla at home. Most people who have Teslas charge them at home. There's no emissions in charging. You don't have to run to a supercharger every time. I have to go to superchargers because I don't have charging at home, but for a lot of people, that's not an issue. The longer the range of the battery, the more carbon is used in the production process. Batteries don't have range. Batteries have capacity, kilowatt hours. Cars have range. This is a dumb thing. Kelly Senecal Conversion Sciences calculated carbon emissions to produce a battery for Nissan. Notice the appeal to some supposed expert. The carbon emissions to produce a battery for a Nissan Leaf equivalent to driving a BMW 320d for 24,000 miles. For a larger Tesla Model S battery, carbon emissions are equivalent to driving the BMW 320d for 60,000 miles. Why are you comparing? This isn't even comparing apples to oranges. This is comparing apples to like rocks. What is this? This is nonsense. How about you compare the carbon emissions to produce a Tesla Model S to the carbon emissions to produce a BMW 7 Series? Because those are comparable vehicles. Right? You're picking out the battery part of the process, and you're picking out the emissions of a fairly efficient BMW, small BMW. You just pull that out of the air. Compare a Tesla Model S to a comparable vehicle. It's a $100,000 sedan. It's a $100,000 luxury sedan. Compare it to a $100,000 luxury sedan like a BMW 7 Series or a Mercedes S-Class. Let's see how much CO2 emissions come from those. But oddly, that's left out. We know the answer, don't we? In addition, transporting batteries from China to the US uses emissions. No crap, transporting oil from Saudi Arabia to the United States uses emissions too. Nonsense. Mining battery ingredients causes environmental damage. You know what causes environmental damage? Oil spills. Oil mining, oil drilling, refining, all this stuff, coal, all these things, you know, that the Heritage Foundation wants more of, all that stuff causes environmental damage too. And the Heritage Foundation doesn't care about that stuff. The negative effects of the environment on the environment of mining for battery components. Such mining disrupts the land in low-income countries. Is the Heritage Foundation now anti-mining? Were they concerned about this stuff when people were making cell phone batteries? Why is it all of a sudden a concern with EV batteries? And are they concerned about cobalt? Cobalt is used in producing oil, in refining oil. Are they concerned about the use of cobalt in refining oil? That's the biggest use of cobalt in the world, is refining oil, turn it into gasoline. Somehow they only care about about cobalt mining when it goes into batteries, but they don't care about it when it goes into oil. Just a bunch of liars. Oh, and they cite Amnesty International, like Heritage Foundation supports Amnesty International. Right wing going for left wing? I don't think so. Lithium is another crucial component of batteries, and they're home to potentially damaging lithium mines. Is the Heritage Foundation opposed to mining now? We were mining lithium before. What mining is okay to the Heritage Foundation? What mining is... This is just total... You're just drumming stuff up. You're just making lies up. Ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, look, yes, lithium mining has consequences. Cobalt mining has consequences. So does oil drilling. So does, you know, mining for iron, mining for whatever. Whatever you're mining for, there are environmental consequences. What's the big deal here? I love this part right here, though. Pure battery-powered vehicles lack sufficient range to satisfy most customers. Although 60 to 70 miles of range is enough for most trips, people buy cars for all circumstances. 60 to 70 miles of range? What are you talking about? The worst Tesla has like 250 miles of range or 260 miles of range. I got 330 miles of range in my Model X Plaid. And effective range 200 plus. Where did you pull out this? Where did she get this 60, 70 miles of range? What electric vehicle is she talking about? What electric vehicle is she driven? And then I love this bit too. Those heading out on vacation this Labor Day weekend will worry about finding charging stations along the highway. No, I drove to California and back. I drove to Austin and back. I drove to California out on I-10 and back on I-40. I didn't have any trouble finding supercharging stations. There's plenty of supercharging stations for Tesla. I don't know what you're talking about. As well as lines to charge the cars, because there's never been a line at a gas station? What are you talking about? There's lines at gas stations. This is not a problem just for EVs, and it is an issue. The nice thing is with a Tesla, the car tells you where to charge. And if the charging station it was sending you gets crowded, it tells you, it redirects you to a charging station that isn't crowded. Do any gas cars have that feature? Hey, the gas station you were going to is crowded. I'm sending you to a different gas station that's less crowded. They don't do that. No, they don't. And not only that, there's free charging for electric vehicles in a lot of places. Use the PlugShare app, you can find free charging. Tell me where you can get free gas. Ridiculous. In most large cities such as New York City, I love this appeal. Well, some people live in apartments and they can't charge their cars at home. Well, less than 1% on the cars of the road are electric vehicles right now. So maybe it doesn't have to be the solution to everybody's problem right away. And you get out to 2030, maybe there'll be a lot. She's talking about there's a question of infrastructure. There's a risk of theft of expensive charging cables. You know, there's crime at gas stations. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's actually a lot of crime at gas stations. And when you charge at home, you don't have to worry about somebody stealing your car or robbing you while you're charging in your garage. So this really goes to the advantage of Tesla. But if you look down the road and you say, well, wait a minute, in 10 years when there's a lot more EVs, there'll be a lot more charging infrastructure. And a lot of apartment buildings, a lot of parking garages, a lot of condo associations will say, you know what? Half our residents now have EVs. We really got to provide charging. It'll be resolved. The economic well-being of low-income Californians might be harmed by having to purchase more expensive vehicles. Well, Tesla is working on ramping production, scaling production, and being able to produce vehicles at low cost. But the reality is, why are low-income people buying cars? You know, we're headed towards a future where Tesla is going to deliver a robo-taxi network. If it's not Tesla, it's somebody else. And riding in robotaxis is going to cost less than owning your own car. And gasoline car industry doesn't care about low-income people. I represented clients who had low-income people typically have poor credit. They typically pay more for car insurance. They pay more for credit for their cars. They're not getting a deal out of the gasoline car industry. Don't buy that for a second. And then there's this comparison. Ford's base model F-150 Lightning electric pickup truck costs $47,000. Its gas-powered twin costs $32,000. I don't know if those are comparable vehicles, but Ford just got started. They haven't had time to iterate and get their costs down in making the F-150 Lightning. Compare the Tesla Model 3 to a comparable Toyota Camry, let's say, which the Tesla costs more, but over the life of the vehicle, the Tesla costs less if you work the numbers, and people have. You know, conclusion, blah, 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 blah. This lady's a talking head. Who cares? Look, the simple truth is the fossil fuel industry doesn't like EVs because the EVs are going to decimate the fossil fuel industry. The oil industry in particular is going to get wiped out. The auto industry, the gasoline car producing industry is going to get wiped out. Electric vehicles are going to dominate. Tesla's going to dominate. There's going to be a bunch of Chinese EV manufacturers. Rivian looks like they're well positioned. There'll be some other EV manufacturers that show up. Maybe a legacy auto manufacturer will figure it out, and they'll produce EVs in volume 2. The game is changing. I'm sorry, Heritage Foundation, your time is up. Bush family, your time is up. The oil industry, your time is up. EVs are coming. Get out of the way. Get on board. Maybe it's time to buy some stock. You want to take care of yourself? Buy some Tesla stock. Not financial advice. Anyway, please check out my other videos, particularly my video about Sorel Amore's FUD. Please support this channel on the Locals platform, on Patreon, or as a YouTube channel member. Links in the description below. You often get early access to videos. Check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please subscribe to this channel, and thank you so much for watching.